All right, I'm going to be replacing this outboard motor. It's currently sitting on my 1975 Chrysler Conqueror 135. Motor still works, good spark. It's a little cranky starting and stuff, but it's over 50 years old. It's an early 70s model, and parts are problematic. Trying to find parts for this thing. We have a very short boating season up here in New Hampshire, 4 months, and 5 months if you want to wear long johns and mittens some days. So I can't afford to be down looking for parts. And so we made the decision to replace the motor. I know I'm going to lose some of the cool factor um, to replacing it, but it just was, I think, the proper thing to do. I am going to keep the motor and mothball it so it will stay with the boat. And so I also just built this rugged little stand I'm going to put it on and stick it over in the corner of my shop, keep it covered. This way I can take and periodically, turn the motor over, make sure it stays oiled up and it will spin freely. All right, so 2 hours later, everything is disconnected. I've got gas lines disconnected, steering disconnected, throttle cable, shifter, all the wiring that was attached here is all pulled off, all pulled out through. These are all the connectors here. This is old school, and I have them labeled 1 through 8, starting from the top down, so that way when this goes back together, it'll be fairly easy. I have 3 1/4-inch bolts down through the top there with a chain holding all 3. The bolts down below, those came out with no problem. I was kind of surprised, but like I said, this has only been in the water 4 years off and on since you rebuilt this, and loose, ready to go. Just waiting for my son to get out of the shower to come down to the shop and give me an extra set of hands. All right, let's do it. Okay, crank her up. Yep. If this falls, I'm gonna stop the recording. All right, one more, one more, one more. All right, you're free. I'll pull it back. Oh. Okay, forward. Yep, good. All right, that sucks. It's too wide. So, I can modify this. I'm going to shut the recording off for a second. I can modify that in about 2 minutes. All right, slight modification. Go ahead, bring it forward. Okay, forward. Okay, drop it down. You're a lot better than that than Mom is. Pick it up a bit. Okay. All right, that was actually easier than I thought. Phase 1 is done. All right, the first order of business was getting the motor home. This motor, it's a 115, weighs 360 pounds, with a crate, probably 400. So it's not just simply slide in the back of a pickup truck. I'm a former contractor, so I have a flatbed trailer, so I brought it over to the dealership. They just dropped this on the flatbed with their forklift. I strapped it down, brought it home. I have a tractor with a set of forks, so I was able to unload it pretty easy. The other thing I did was I have some antique cars, and as you can see in the bottom there, I have a set of skates that you put underneath the car so you can move them around if the engine's not running, which is at least half the time with my cars. So anyway, so I built a platform and put it on the skates. Then I simply just took the forklift and dropped the the entire motor crate on top of that, which makes it very easy to move around. Very easy to move around. Something you want to consider is you want it fairly close to the boat when you take and pick it up. I'm using the cherry picker, so I want to be close to the boat. You want to be walking that motor across 20 or 30 feet of shop area, hanging off a cherry picker. It just, too many things can go wrong. So anyway, that's all ready to go, and shortly we'll be mounting that. All right, the motor is off the boat. The next step is to remove this plate. I'm not using these two holes here, so this has to come off to plug it right. This has to come off so I can fill these holes. I also have some holes over here to fill. There's a kicker motor, which I'm not going to use, and someone did a crappy job plugging a hole here, so I'm going to take and plug all the holes while I got the material. But I wanted to real quickly just take and find the center line and just see how everything looked. There's two different ways to do the center line. The first way is I measured from lifting strike to lifting straight, cut it, measure it in half, I get a dot here. Then the second lifting strike over to here, again cut it in half, I get a dot here. Then I measure chine to chine, I get a dot here. So I got my three center line dots there. The other method is you take a string and you tie a pencil or a Sharpie, something on the end of it, and then you hold the string over on chine here, come over to the center, make a little mark, then using the same spot on the string, come over to this chine, make the mark there, stretch it out, and again, same thing, make a mark up as close as you can to the top. From both sides, again, the same length of string. So where they cross, that is the center line. I had a few problems down low. I had the speedo bracket in the way, and up higher, what was left of the ladder was in the way. But anyway, I got that done. I drew a string line. I drew a line down through, and everything lines up. I mean, these two dots are off by less than a 16th. So for a 50-year-old boat, I'm real happy. For some reason, kind of odd, these holes are off by an inch to the port side. So for the entire life, the motors were mounted 1 inch to the port side. Why? I don't know. I did take and post a question on one of those Facebook boat repair groups, and I got the usual assortment of answers. A third of the guys were helpful. A third of the guys just replied, I don't know. And the other third said I was doing everything wrong. So the typical, group of people. Anyway, so the next job now is get the bracket off and get the holes fixed. All right, the plate is off. It took about 10 minutes. It wasn't no big deal. I just used a putty knife in the corner to get started. Once I got the putty knife in, I had those shim shingles, and I just put the shim shingle in each side of the putty knife, and tapped them in and worked my way across the bottom with the putty knife, loosening stuff up, and then just tapping the shim shingles in more, and popped right off. So this is ugly, but I've seen a lot worse. It's basically just a mixture of caulking and paint, nothing serious. Same on this. I've already started to clean it up right here, scrape that off, and then some acetone, clean it up real nice. The one thing I'm going to do is this joint here is kind of ugly, so I'm going to clean this all up, and I'm going to get some more fiberglass and resin on this, get this sealed up a bit better and seal it all up before I put the plate back on. I'm also going to take off these two trim pieces on each side, and I might as well, I'm gonna check the joint all the way back. I'll probably end up doing this whole joint all the way across with some fresh fiberglass mat just to make sure everything's kosher. The other interesting thing is I found two hidden holes, one here and one here. So this was not the original motor on the boat. And behind it, you can see the new plywood in there. I already stuck it with a screwdriver and it's solid, which is a very good sign. So obviously I'm going to plug these holes up too. So I got a day's worth of work ahead of me before I can get the motor on. All right, so I got this all cleaned up. A couple hours of scraping for all the caulking and stuff. I did a cut in the top of the transom, the fiberglass off. I came back down about an inch on the back side, and I put 4 layers of new fiberglass mat on. First layer was CSM, 2 layers of woven, and the last one was another one of CSM. And it just tied it all together real nice. I plugged the 4 holes. Only the bottom 2 went all the way through. The top 2 just went through the new plywood. I didn't bother doing a video on that because there's 100 different videos already on how to do that. And I follow Fishbump TV on YouTube. The guy's very knowledgeable, second generation builder. And he was plugging some holes in a transom for his friend's boat not too long ago. And he was using this stuff here. It's from Fiberglass Warehouse. It's called vinyl ester structural putty. And he recommends it. And I only had 2 holes that went all the way through. It's a structural putty. So I gave it a shot. I really liked it. So again, that's from Fiberglass Warehouse. Amazon sells it, of course, too. So while I was at it, I decided to take and brush on a fresh coat of gel coat in the back here just for extra protection, because once the motor and plate goes on, there's no turning back. So I figured do it now. I wasn't concerned about matching the color. I can actually match that a bit later if I want to take and sand it down, you know, and try to match it better. I might do that next winter, but for now, this is good enough. Alright, so I got the plate all cleaned up, ready to put the plate on. I was going through the directions from Mercury. They do not want to see any plates or shims between the transom and the motor. So I really want to put that on because my personal feeling is that's 3/8, you know, plates, heavy duty. I just feel that disperses the energy from the motor over a broader section of the transom. Plus on the inside of this boat, it's braced very well here and here where it ties into the stringers and stuff. So it really helps, you know, spread everything out over the transom. So I went over to the marine where I bought the motor and I talked to the service manager. He's older than me, so he's been in it his whole life, so he knows the stuff. And he said that if the transit's in good shape, he said no problem using the plate. He says what Mercury doesn't want to see is someone repowering an older boat and they get a soft transom, and instead of fixing it correctly, they just throw a plate on for a band-aid. So they don't want to see that, so that's why they do not recommend plates. But so anyway, I'm going to put the plate back on. I feel better. The other thing we discussed is all the caulking that I had on the, and you can see from the video, some of it was yellow, which to me meant water was trapped there for a long time. So he was in agreement with me, no caulking, just put the plate back on. It's going to be, you know, bolted, you know, to the transom, you know, it's going to be sandwiched on. So why get water trapped behind there? So no caulking, that way no water can get trapped behind there, it can just all drain out. And I won't have to worry about anything sitting in there long term, especially, you know, if, you know, I run the boat late in the season and, you know, we get a freeze. So that's the game plan. Alright, if you're going to be mounting a newer motor on an older boat with no holes pre-drilled like you always see in the other videos, you're going to need a template. So something like this. The dealership actually let me borrow this, because I've known the guy 50 years. Anyway, so he let me borrow this. You can buy something similar to this on eBay, but they're a 3D thing, you know, the PVC, and they're actually, you have to clip them together. But this is very precise. I mean, it's a 17/32 hole you drill in to accept a 1/2-inch bolt. So there's really no room for error on this. So you really need a template if you don't have pre-existing holes to go through. So again, $40 on eBay, well worth it if you have to take and buy them. Okay, I reestablished the center line for the motor. I got the transom bolt template clamped in place. It is securely clamped. You don't want anything to move. I even have a piece of angle line I put in the back here, as you can see. So I really clamped down hard as I could so nothing moves while I drill. All right, the holes were all drilled. Took longer than I thought it would, which is par for the course. That metal plate on the transom, that was tough to drill through, so I didn't want to ruin the only good drill bit that I had. Drill bit size is 17/32, so I bought a brand new one just for this. So what I did was I just drilled in enough to make a divot on that metal, then took that plate off, you know, and just drilled it on the ground. And I smoked 3 drill bits, 1/2-inch drill bits, and 3 of these step bits, trying to get through that metal plate. So that's some tough stuff. But once I got through that, I put it back on the boat and clamped everything back down, and I drilled through. So, and obviously you can see I got 2 bolts in there right now just to test, make sure everything fit. And also, I bought these off of Amazon. These, instead of the regular flat washers, $25 for the pair. The transom reinforcement brackets. Much better way to fasten the bolts on than just the washers. Well worth it. Okay, it is time to pick up the engine. I already removed the shroud. This just snaps off. Pressure fit. Mercury Marine, they sell a I-ring, putting right here, a lifting ring, I mean. And so you take this off, put that in. I mean, if you want to spend a couple $100, that's fine. What I'm going to do is, you got these 3 holes right here, 3/8 by 16, not metric, which is perfect for me. So I made a template. I took a measurement, made a template of those 3 holes. I transferred it onto this. This is my lifting plate for engines when I'm working on my cars. So I transferred those measurements onto here. I drilled 3 holes. Now when you drill the holes, you want to take and have the center pickup loop directly over this, because if you're off to the side, when you pick the motor up, it's gonna, you know, it's not gonna hang perfectly straight. So try to be close as you can. So anyway, I hopefully get these close. So what I do is I just got I ran the bolt through the hole. On the back side, I put a nut on about 1/2 to 5/8 down. You really don't want to penetrate through here any more than that. So I'm going to put the next one on, just screw this in, then snug the bolts down so everything's nice and tight, and we're ready to lift up the engine tomorrow morning. Okay, engine is on. I was short-handed, didn't have anybody to videotape this, and just too much thrashing around. But anyway, the only issue we had was the platform that I had underneath the shipping platform, which I rolled around the shop, which worked fine. But as you can see, the legs for my engine hoist wouldn't go in far enough, so we couldn't reach in far enough, you know, with this top section here to take and grab the engine hoist that was on top of the flywheel. So I just jacked up this platform a bit, and those black skates there, I took one of the skates out and I stuck it more towards the middle, and I put a 2x4 across underneath it, and that raised this platform up high enough where I was able to just take and then slide, you know, the engine hoist in far enough so the legs cleared, went underneath it, and hooked under the engine, picked it right up, and we did a dry fit. I mean, everything fit perfectly. I mean, if you double check everything, sometimes things go your way, so the motor bolted right on. We did a dry fit, and I had to raise it one hole. Kind of funny, the service manager where I bought the motor, he used to own a Chrysler Conqueror, a boat like this. So he said I should have the cavitation plate an inch above the bottom. He said that's where it's going to work the best. So anyway, we moved it up one notch. So anyway, but the cavitation plate ended up being about 3/4 of an inch above the bottom of the boat. If I go up another notch, it's going to be 1.5 inches, which I don't think, I might be used to hair high, so I'm not looking for speed anymore. So I'm happy where it is now. But everything bolted in. The other nice thing was the steering apparatus. The old boat had it was mounted to the boat, so I didn't think it was going to fit. And it actually came around, and it did thread into the tube here that's attached to the motor, and it was the right length. So hopefully that's going to work fine. And I'm going to have the marina check it once everything's done. So the next thing to do now is get the cable box and all the cables wired in. All right, next order of business is the control unit. So you have two routes you can go. You can go with the expensive unit, the Mercury unit, or you can take a chance on the aftermarket unit. I looked around, there was one decent aftermarket unit, it looked like. Of course, back order, no idea when they were going to get it in. So, and the other units, the reviews were so bad, I wasn't even going to consider buying one. So I bit the bullet and bought the Mercury unit. So you don't want, if this fails, that ain't going to work behind you either. So, I'm just going to spend the money and do it right. So the next order of business is to get this located, where it's going to feel comfortable for me. Get the holes drilled, do a dry fit, make sure everything works. Okay, so I did run into a slight problem. I have a trim piece right here on the boat, which sticks out almost 1.5 inches below where the control is going to be mounted. So Mercury gives you this backing plate, which keeps the controller off the boat, so that way that it hits some ventilation, so you're not putting a flat piece of plastic against this fabric and getting water trapped. So anyway, even with this filler on, it was still hitting this right here, and actually hitting this. So being a carpenter, the first thing I figured, well, use a piece of wood. So I went out to my trailer, storage trailer, and rummaged around, and this is what I came up with, is a piece of AZAC, all right? Obviously I painted it black to match this. You don't want to use plywood or anything else. You want to use AZAC or El Cheapo, they sell, it's called, PVC wood, something like that, but it won't rot. It doesn't hold any moisture, no mold, so that's the way to go. So I used this thing from Mercury for a template to make this. So I mounted everything on, put it against this. It was still hitting this. So I took and I glued on a 1/2 inch bolt, and then for a mounting area, I glued on a 1/2 inch washer on top of it. So this way it doesn't set tight, against the fabric down here. So this will go on, this will set down here like this, then everything else will pile on, and it will hold everything up perfectly, and the handle misses this part of the boat by 1/4 to 3/8 of an inch. So that's what I have to do to take and solve that small problem. All right, all mounted, came out nice, 3/8 of an inch clearance. One correction I want to make is on my spacers here. I used a 1/2 inch washer and a 1/2 inch nut, not a bolt, it was a nut. Sorry about that. Anyway, so the only issue I ran into was by the time I put my spacer on, and there's a 3/4 inch spacer behind this, the mounting bolts that Mercury supplied weren't long enough. And of course they're a nice black finish head, and I didn't want to take and try to find them. And of course they're metric. So what I ended up doing, I just took the cheap way out. I just took 3 1-inch bolts, just quarter 20s, cut the head off them, and just welded them on to the end of the, the Mercury Marine bolts that were they supplied, and just install it that way. I do got to pick up 3 lock nuts because I didn't have any in the shop. But anyway, that was the easy way to fix that. But this is all installed, works nice. And the next thing you do is get onto the engine. All right, real quick. My gauges are old, everything else. So I spent the extra money and I bought this Mercury. It's a SmartCraft monitoring unit, the SC1000. And what I liked about it, it's a hardwired unit. SmartCraft also has a Bluetooth unit where you plug into the motor. There's a connection back there, and then you download an app. You put it on your phone or your tablet. And I read a lot of bad reviews. I mean, it works nice when you get service, I guess. If you're up in a remote location, if there's no cell service, if you can't open up your phone, if your app's not going to work, that means your gauges aren't going to work. So I opted for the hardwired version. Of course, it came with no directions, so I had to call the marina where I bought it, Offshore Performance or something out of Fort Myers. The service director, real nice guy. Anyway, so there's only a 3-foot lead, but he says what you do is you got this harness here, which comes off of your Mercury control unit, the control box, and you plug this into a junction box, and then the lead from this plugs into the junction box. So of course, $60. So I had to buy that. But anyway, this thing has like 14 functions, including engine hours and stuff like that. So if it works like it's supposed to, it's really no brainer. Okay, now onto this mess. So control cables, I ended up with 15 footers. I'm sure you've seen it on YouTube by now. You just measure from the control box back to the back of the boat, and from the corner to here, at 4 feet. And mine was like 15 feet 1 inch, and then they recommend rounding up, but I didn't. And so the 15 foot is going to work perfectly. So anyway, everything runs through this pigeonhole in the motor right down here. And Mercury's a pretty nice setup. They got this rubber grommet. Everything is a run through. It's labeled here. There's even more detailed breakdown in the service manual, or actually the directions for that, I should say. That, and then this, all right? So everything has a run through there, this hole here. So there's 2 ways you can do this. You can just run everything through, get this on, and then do what, Cabela's, Bass Pro Shops, a lot of other ones do. They just take and zip tie everything together, in like every 4 inches, Could do that, or you can do what I did, spend a little bit extra money, buy a hunk of hose. This is 2.5 inch, PVC hose. You can buy this at the marinas. Most of them, you got to order it. And I lucked out. I went to Cabela's. They had a hunk left over because they had a customer who insisted that they do it the right way and cover all the stuff with this. So this makes for a much needed application, in my opinion. Plus it protects everything. Kind of no-brainer. Anyway, so what you want to do first is your shift cable and throttle cable. These are going to control the length of this hose here. So put these in first. Don't connect them up, but just get them where it's supposed to go. Then you can take a measurement, crank the motor all the way that way, then take a measurement from here out around to where they come out into the transom area here. Then add like another foot. You want to do that so you can stuff it down in there. And unless you have something that will connect there too, but I'm just going to stuff it down the hole. But that's what you want to do. So then, then you want to cut this piece of hose and feed everything through it, and then connect in. And there's quite a few things that go through this. You figure there's this, you get battery cables, you get connectors and stuff. But the first thing you want to feed through will be this is the 14-pin connector hose from the control box. And with this fat end on it, this has to go through first. Otherwise, you're not going to be able to probably get it through by the time you get everything else in. So anyway, this is the next step. Okay, having a fitment issue with my aftermarket throttle and shift cables that I bought on Amazon. Here's the problem right here. This little like plastic barrel thing. These are a 1/16 of an inch too long. So what's happening is I got the shift cable in, and it fits down in, that barrel fits down in, tight down here. This little slot right here, how it fits in there like that. Now the problem is, at 1/16 of an inch long, it would not fit down in there. So I had to take and file it down to get it in, so it fits in now. And then the same issue, let's see here, it's tight in here. This is the holder right here. That is where the throttle cable goes. Same issue. It won't snap down in place because that little plastic barrel is too long. So again, I saved myself 50 bucks, but I'm paying for it now. All right, so everything's pushed through. So what I did first was I took the two control cables, the shift and throttle, I hooked them up to the engine, and I adjusted them for length, so they're all adjusted already. And then I took a measurement from the motor down around to there, following the cables, added a foot, and I cut this black hose. This black hose actually threads on to this fitting here. It's a pretty nice setup. So anyway, so I threaded that on. Then obviously I disconnected the cables, I pushed them back in. And then the first thing I pulled through was this 14-pin connector because of the fat end. So this came through first, followed by the two cables. Then the new gas hose. I mean, they're only 6 years old, and you know, the ethanol beats the crap out of these lines. So I just opted to buy a new one while everything was apart. So this came through. Then I pushed the battery cables through this way, and the last thing to come through was a speedometer tube. And I didn't realize it, but these new motors come with a built-in speedometer in the lower unit. Pretty cool setup, actually. So I ended up running my electrical snake through the tube this way and taped it on and just pulled it back. I just couldn't get it through otherwise. It was just too much stuff in the way by this time. Everything's through, so now the next thing to do is to take and get everything connected up. All right, we have power. This took a lot longer than I thought, for the course. It's just, you know, you have 7 pieces, you know, between the tubing, the tubes, and the cables, everything else. There's 7 items coming through this rigging hose into a very tight area in the motor. So it just makes it very difficult to work. I can see why the marinas do not use the rigging hose, just because the way it funnels everything in, so there's not a lot of flexibility working there. It just takes a lot longer to do stuff. So, but I think the end result, it looks a lot better. So, you know, I'm glad it's time to do it. The thing that makes it difficult is behind this is the rigging grommet, which is, I showed you once before, it's this piece right here. It's a rubber, it's rubber grommet. All the holes are pre-drilled for the right, you know, the right size. It holds everything in place where it belongs, so stuff doesn't chafe. But just getting everything situated around that, you know, it took some time. So the first thing I connected up was the speedometer tube. Second thing was a quick disconnect for the gas. Then the shift cable, the shift rod, which was the lower one, and the throttle rod. And then after that, I wiggled this in place, hooked it up. And the last thing was the 14-pin connector. So the one thing on the directions in the manual, it did say do not take and relocate the quick disconnect for the gas into the engine compartment. Obviously, they don't want a gas leak in there. But now, if you have a gas leak, you have a gas leak out here, and it's going to travel down the tube. It could possibly make it into the back of the boat, which, you know, isn't great either. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to cut a couple slits in the very bottom of that hose. So if there is a problem or something, you know, I'll be able to take and see it, you know, and figure it out. I'm not going to do the initial fire up. It's a brand new motor under warranty, so I'm bringing it back to Marina next week. They're going to do the initial fire up, check it out, make sure everything's ready to go. Then I'll get it back. So anyway, I hope this video, you know, was helpful. And You know, you can do it yourself, and you can save yourself quite a bit of money versus having a marina, you know, mount the engine for you.